Coming to you straight from the Rio Grande and beyond. Broadcasting to the four corners of the globe. So grab your seat, your coffee, or your sundowner.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
On point, as always. This is Gloves Off. Gloves Off.
So when I was working on Selena, the series for Netflix, to play the role of Abraham Quintanilla, I put on a specific amount of weight, which I was fine doing, but also realizing it could be difficult to get that weight off. I got back into my physical regimen with James Leha, but I was still having trouble with just those last amounts. And that's when I got to meet Arturo from Laredo Medical Weight Loss Clinic. And just the products that he gave me kind of put me over the edge. I feel great about myself.
Back at you in Gloves Off, and I got two great martial artists, people that I say they're my friends and brothers and sisters, and we're going to have to one day get together and move forward. David Bateman and his daughter, Marilis Bateman. How are you all doing today?
Awesome.
Doing good, sir.
Good. How's Texas?
An opportunity to do a podcast with you.
Anytime. And this is I found out that before we had to send letters to instructors across the states years ago. Then emails came of age. Then all of a sudden forums. And now we can at least talk and exchange ideas. And people need to understand that even though we live from each other, the things that revolve around martial arts is always about the same. Right now, we have the schools coming back into play. Every kid and teenager is going back to school, and already I'm getting the calls of my kids being bullied. They just started a week ago. Are you all getting that type of stuff?
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course. It's one of the main reasons we see the kids are coming to our gym right now, especially with back to school season, is that they are trying to learn some type of self-defense for anti-bullying.
Is that the main reason? How do you tell parents when they come in? Because there's so many schools out there, from the school that's actually teaching, like your all's, to schools that are more McDojos, as we call them, right? And babysit karate schools. And how do you differ for somebody that doesn't know? Because most parents don't know what one art is to the other, yet alone schools to the other. So how do you all go about and talk to them about it?
First and foremost, we still train with high standards. And when you train your students, your clients, and yourself with high standards, this leads to achievements such as indomitable spirit, respect, self-esteem, just total confidence. And that's one of the huge reasons that we bring clients into our gym, is because of what we ultimately do with one's character, and then how they respect themselves and how they cherish staying off the couch. It's something highly pushed in our gym, in our teachings, and then also my preaching against video games.
Absolutely. That I've had instances where we had a 12-year-old kid that would cry when he came in. And he wouldn't get on the mat. He would just cry, and sit down and cry until one day I called his mom and said, "Come pick him up." And the mom picked him up, and he goes, "Okay, now I can go play my video game." And I told the mom, "Listen, it's your choice, but you have to ultimately tell him either you're only going to play this for half an hour or that's it." But for them to be on it the whole day and the whole night, it's cost productive.
It's a huge problem in America, and I often try to encourage a parent to look at the tool that they're sitting down their children to watch and play with, what it's actually taking from them, taking away the old school, staying outside, playing with your friends, getting with neighbors, riding your bikes, skateboards, climbing trees, whatever, the healthier things. So maybe not even allowing or having video games in the home until they're adults.
That's how he raised me, is that I was not allowed to have any video games in the house until I was 18. So it worked. It helped me keep active outside and busy with martial arts and other things. So
It wasn't that I ultimately didn't allow it. I never promoted it. And there was no reason. I kept Marilis busy enough. That's the whole object. You have to keep your children busy. If you sit them on the couch, if you have them inside all the time, it will mess with their self-esteem.
Absolutely. No, yeah, you're absolutely correct. And in today's world, there's a lot more dangers inside the schools, especially with gangs and stuff like that. You can easily get a kid that is very fearful that is going to join a gang because of the sheer numbers of protection.
True.
And all of a sudden, now
A lot of gang activity in Cleveland. It's a very conservative in a religious area because there's like 350 churches that are active in Cleveland. I know that some have been affected since COVID, but it's a very, the university is here. Then you got Omega Center International with Perry Stone and some of the big churches, T.L. Lowry. With this community here, they're picky. And
Really?
a lot of them like to settle. If you research this area, Cleveland, Chattanooga, the South, the Southeast, it has problems with extensive obesity. And it's sad because it's here. It's, if you research it, if you Google it, you can see that. And I research these things all the time. And people here don't want to hear that. But the ones that really want to change, they know that I preach it and I put my foot down, and you see these ones now starting to really come out of their shell and understand that the children are being hurt and they need something that will tap into them and allow them to see more of their potential. Martial arts does that because when you become well trained in martial arts for several years, especially as a child, it gives you other stellar abilities.
And that's something that kind of goes back to that question is, what do we tell parents when they're coming into the gym and how they can tell the difference between a real martial artist and the dojo, is that you need to focus on a school who is going to focus on your child and their personal development. If they're just, even though numbers can kind of be intimidating, big numbers be like, oh, wow, they must be doing something right because they've got 300 students in the gym. Well,
right.
they're taking the time to focus on your child and their specific techniques, problems, issues. If you don't have a coach that's going to be personal with you, then there's not going to be any growth. So that's one thing I tell parents all the time too, is that when you're coming into the gym, not only is your child learning self-defense, but they're actually learning the tenets of TaeKwonDo as well and instilling that character.
No, you're absolutely correct. And that's what I see here. You see a type of age barrier, especially in Savat. Savat's a little bit different than Taekwondo. Align more with the kickboxing essence, right? With more boxing essence with it. And so it kind of like the little guys are just not around. You don't see them. But you start seeing the 16, 17-year-old above, right? And when you go into, we also teach Kempo, American Kempo, and we also teach Capoeira. My wife teaches Capoeira. That's a different group. Understand what I'm saying? And I see different, but what I see here is I see two things in parents. One, the parent that sees a child being very recluse because of being bullied. All of a sudden, most martial arts that are being taught correctly are going to teach them how to gain confidence and self-esteem. That's going to be part of it. So they start right away. And you see that kid that used to come down with his head bowed down, now walk upright, start giving that little, how can I, self-confidence.
Right.
So the parents move him and stick him into another sport. Well, he really didn't learn anything because he was probably here about 5 months, 3 months, 5 months, and they remove him and place him somewhere else, back into the same element where he was being bullied at.
Right.
You know? Just because
the big thing about, go ahead.
that and the steam rise up. So that's what we're dealing with. I don't know if you see that.
Yeah, we do. We see that where mainly people will come in just for the school season, like again, just for that reason, because their kids being bullied. They think that, hey, martial arts is a quick fix. They're just going to learn A, B, C, and D, and then afterwards we can just stick them in something else when they're not interested. The thing is that it's a process. There's a reason why you have grades from white belt to black belt, because each stage teaches you something different, a different aspect, a different character aspect in martial arts for that individual. And if you only keep them in where they get their yellow belt and then you take them out, they only learned this much of what could be this big for that person.
If you go into martial arts, it's a bad thing to step into a gym, have a dream and a vision that you want to be a black belt or you want to become proficient. And then when people get into a martial arts school and really do it, they become discouraged because it's hard.
Yeah.
And so, especially now, tapping into this generation and tapping into Cleveland, Tennessee, it's a very highly promoted mixed martial arts area. And the uniqueness of some of the instructors and masters is that we highly push character development before fighting. Learning to fight takes many years. You just can't learn it overnight. And then if you learn it or try to pursue it overnight, you will learn it wrong and spend many years trying to unlearn what you learned wrong to learn a great martial art. So character, time. I mean, some parents will, they will say, over at this gym, I can get a black belt in 2 years. I'm like, sorry, man, but here it takes about 4 to 7 years to earn a black belt because this is a secondary education. We have things beyond just punching and kicking and beating people up that we want to teach.
Absolutely. No, you're correct. Here it's more like 9 months to 10 to a year of kids. There's schools here that kids are running around with black belts, and it's funny how some of the kids have left their school that were here for a year, and all of a sudden you see them on Facebook and their parents are showing a picture a month later and they're wearing a black belt. And you're like, okay, well, it makes our school look good, right? But
Right.
That's not the issue. The issue is parents think that it's a microwavable offense. That's a microwavable learning process. I just click on the button. My son's gonna, the martial art fairy is gonna come out and wave the wand. All of a sudden, here's a black belt, and it's not gonna happen. You're not gonna learn it that way. And let me put it this way: I started at the age of 6. I'm gonna next month I'll be 56. So I'll be doing the savate for 50 years. It's a long time. And when I don't know if you saw this, I started teaching very early at 18, and I had a school in 90, and I taught in France and here and so on and so forth. And the calls that I used to get have changed because I write everything down. The calls before was a father calling, hello, do you accept kids? I need you to teach my son how to fight.
Right.
Come over, or my daughter how to fight. Bring them over. The father would. As time progressed to where we're at now, it got to the husband calling and says, my wife is going to take my son or daughter to there, and they need for them to learn how to fight. Okay. Somewhere in 2006, it was the wife calling, oh, my husband told me to call this school because you would teach my son how to defend himself. So the fighting went to defend himself, right?
Right.
Pick up the phone and say, how much is it? They don't even ask why they're coming, what they're looking for, or what. They're just like, well, how much is it?
Right.
Right. I mean, whenever I'm taking phone calls for our gym, for our dojang, that's the first thing that comes out of parents' mouth. How much is it?
Yeah.
And I get that with economy. And I mean, if you're bringing 3 kids or you're bringing 1 kid and 1 kid's going to Taekwondo, 1 kid's going to soccer, especially during the school year, I get that, hey, you want to get straight to the point. The thing is how much is it worth to you to get your kid to be able to defend themselves and be confident in life, not just for the school season, but in life.
Right. And then also experience the way that Marilis and I present martial arts is that we've traveled all over the world. We've competed in Europe, we've competed in Mexico, we've competed in Brazil. She's, ranked number 13 in the world in 2023 and end of 2024 in K1 kickboxing. And our experiences are beyond just a local experience. Our eyes have been opened internationally, so we know things and seen things and experienced things that we can really present at a different and higher level to me, to those that attend our gym in the area, just simply because of the fact that we've expanded out. There's so many martial arts instructors, they'll open up their gyms, they have their way, but they never expand out, they never pressure test themselves. And since the get-go, since the 80s, when I opened our first school in Big Lake, Minnesota, we've always pressure tested our schools, our clients, and ourselves as masters.
Absolutely. And congratulations on your achievements. And
Thank you.
I followed when your dad would send me the clips, and especially in Brazil. My wife's Brazilian. We have actually 3 clubs of Savate in Brazil right now. And
we love Brazil. The Brazilian people were awesome. I mean, it was just a cool experience like he was saying, pressure test yourself and to compete internationally. But
both Mexico and Brazil, when Marilis won her Pan American gold in 2021, correct?
Yes, sir.
That was a cool experience.
Absolutely.
What disappoints me ultimately, and we're shooting for kickboxing to be accepted into the Olympics, but what disappoints me a little bit is how commercial it has to become in order for it to be that successful. So it's become more commercial, more expensive, and then that detours people out. And we would really like to see kickboxing go to the Olympic level, but there's still a lot of things to happen for us to see that succeed.
Absolutely. The same thing with Savate, or Boxe Française Savate is the actual sport. Boxe Française Savate, French boxing Savate. And it hasn't been in there. The Olympics is pretty strange. You have the International Olympic Committees, the International Olympic Committee. Then you have national Olympic committees.
Right.
And a federation that is not recognized by the National Olympic Committee, it will never be recognized in the International Olympic Committee. You can have an international governing body of a sport, like say kickboxing, or in this case, Boxe Française Savate, and they might acknowledge it. They acknowledge that it exists. But what happens is, if the other countries that you claim that you have are not, they don't have federations by themselves, and those federations being recognized by each country's National Olympic Committee, it'll never get in there.
Right.
It's just a process, and people don't think different. And I think this year they had spectator sport, right? Of kickboxing.
Is not a spectator sport. Now, Taekwondo was still in, and they actually chose, I believe it was breakdancing and a couple other unique sports over kickboxing and Muay Thai. Which I'm totally blown away, because kickboxing's at a whole nother level, and you're going to have a lot more spectators watching kickboxing.
Absolutely. When Buitron was one of the founders of the Olympics, when they made the Olympics, you're talking about turn of the century, of 19th century, pre-World War I, Boxing says Savat was part of the Olympics. And the last time they portrayed in the Olympics was in Berlin with Hitler. So you can imagine. Then all of a sudden,
Joy Waco USA, the Rob Zoblisky and David Bivey are trying to really bring it to another level, and also make sure that there's some curriculum to the organization, especially for the coaches. I just became a certified coach in the last couple of years and upgraded my coaching for this year. And then, there's computer work that you must do. There's college level pods that you have to complete and stuff like that. And then, of course, you can attend seminars, and then they want you to get to a point where they're seeing you in person so they can teach you, because a lot of people don't understand when you get in kickboxing, it's a whole different game, and especially with Waco kickboxing, the point system than they do. And then in order for Marilis to even transition from Taekwondo to kickboxing, it took work. You can't just jump into a ring as a Taekwondo fighter and defeat a high-level kickboxer. I don't see it. I haven't seen it done.
Right. You're absolutely correct, because the movements are different. And then let alone, I see it all the time with Savat. The closest thing we used to do in the late 90s, early 2000s was all my guys that were fighting in Savat, because USA Savat's the national governing body of Savat here, was you guys also joined USA Boxing. We're going to be boxing every other weekend. We're going to go to a smoker. You guys are going to be boxing. You might have 3-4 fights of Savat per year, but I guarantee you by the time you go into that ring, you guys are going to have 10 bouts of boxing. So, so they were seasoned.
Right.
And
Savat rules, those rules are even deeper than the Waco low kick and the K1.
Yeah. And
Savat, you can low check and stuff like that with your feet.
Yeah. And you can kick with shoot.
Savat, if I remember, can you take down a Savat? You can throw them down, no? Or grab the kick?
You can take their legs from them. They call it bala. You can sweep them to the ground. But the difference between Savat and the other arts is Savat, number one, you wear a shoe, similar to a big shoe. And you can kick any part of the leg, interior, whether it's like a side kick chasse or like a fuerte this way. So it really does. But the movement's different. It's a little bit different. But they're all good sports. If I tell parents this, if you're not, because we get a lot of parents that they look at Facebook and they call you from Houston. Oh, what time's class? And I go, number one, where are you calling from? Houston. I'm 5 hours away, but here's a school over there, or look for this over there.
Right. I remember years ago, back in the 70s, when my dad pulled me in the garage and he said, "I'm going to teach you to kick butt." I was like, okay. It's called Savat and TaeKwonDo, because he was in the Savat and TaeKwonDo and other arts that would leg kick. And he was teaching me a side kick to the legs and the knees, and round kick to the legs and knees, and come up with back fists to the face, and then angle off, and kick the back of the leg. So everything was low. I didn't do a high kick probably till like the later 70s, like 77.
Absolutely. Yeah. They're just beautiful sports. I did it for a long time. In fact, one time I was third in the world super middleweight division, but I blew my hand. I don't know if you can see it. There's a big scar down here. Mm-hmm. I blew my hand, and so I had 11 reconstructive surgery. So that took me off.
Right.
That's
he taught old Savat. So I'm not sure I never really understood what he meant by old Savat, because I always thought Savat was a sport, but I did a little research on it. It wasn't always a sport. It was like a street sport almost.
It was a street art. It was something that developed in the street
art.
Just like capoeira in Brazil. And they're trying to make capoeira a sport, but you can't, because there's, what are you going to do with helmets and so on and so forth? It'll change the dynamics of it. but they're trying, you know,
Right.
trying. They're trying.
He must have studied Savant because Dad did everything that Bruce Lee would do.
Yeah, yeah. So here's another question. When you all are doing, let's look at your kickboxing programs and your kickboxing classes. What's the age group that you're getting into? What's the age group that you're calling in?
We actually teach our Taekwondo for the last several years now as kickboxing. So they're not
Okay.
getting Taekwondo. They're getting the Taekwondo that I grew up with back in the 70s where it was kickboxing, 70s and 80s. Then it switched to the Olympic thing, you know, and
Yeah, we call it trembling shock as far as the way that we fight because it's instead of doing like how you were talking about capoeira, that they're trying to put the helmets on and changing the dynamics of the art itself. Well, once electronics came into Taekwondo, it changed the dynamics of the fighting. And although, yes, that's great, you're still learning great martial arts, you're still learning that character development. It's not realistic enough for the street. You can't front leg fight. So we decided as a gym, okay, so what do we want to focus more on? Competing or self defense? And so when that self defense took priority, we said, okay, well, kickboxing, that stand up art is a little bit more realistic than the Taekwondo.
a
So
lot
that's,
more realistic.
yeah, yeah. So that's why we teach it in the classes itself. And our classes span from 6 years old and up. But again, that grading system from white belt to black belt kind of helps you keep certain ages not separate altogether because all of our classes are all ages 6 and up together. But and a 6-year-old might stay at a white belt longer than a 9-year-old. That's the way that it goes.
Marlies has been there through transitions of the different generations. It's actually a little harder to teach kids right now. But we went back to not a sport focus. And when sport becomes the focus, you can lose students like crazy over that. Now, we will bring students to tournaments, but our focus right now is the individual, them earning their belts, getting their grades, becoming proficient at skills. We kind of went back to more of an old school method of teaching, like pre 80s, like late 80s, like the late 80s, where we weren't mandated by all these different sport rules that I jumped into with the USTU and with Kick, Karate International Council of Kickboxing is who we kickbox with back in them days.
Absolutely.
And then of course the sports scene with NASCA, and it's all sport, cool, and everything. Don't get me wrong, that's nice, but right now we're seeing an inflow of students because it's becoming the focus of self-defense. So we're mixing the Taekwondo, the kickboxing, and the Hapkido in our sessions like we did years ago. So
Absolutely.
you can probably call it Hapkido if you want. Students see that it's more of a mixed martial arts base, but we still teach forms and teach that forms are mind food. Some instructors teach them as a waste. And this is where kids struggle. Kids struggle because memorization. And Marlies and I have discussed this before in the past about maybe not even using forms, but I think forms are essential. It gives students something a little bit more to shoot for. And then, I mean, if you're just board breaking and sparring and then throwing people around the floor and doing self-defense all the time and not able to apply your martial art in by yourself as a routine, I think that you're missing elements.
But I think it also teaches you aspect of martial arts, which is self-control too. If you're just consistently fighting all the time and you're not learning to slow down, you're not going to have good technique. If you're going 110% all the time and you're not, hey, let's take this class at about 75%. Let's slow down this technique. Let's do these forms. And growing yourself when it comes to, you got to kick it down 110% in a fight, you're not going to be able to do well. So if you're just consistently training at 110, and not being able to slow yourself down for that development, you're going to be lacking in some areas for sure.
You got to take time.
I agree.
You go into the belt factories aren't taking time.
Right. I saw differences in other arts that I've trained throughout the past. Right. And one thing that I saw difference in culture, Texas was more of a boxing culture. North Texas had wrestling. You really didn't have kickboxing. You had point karate, even though we had some great point fighters come out like Ray McCullum and Demetrius Havanas way back in the '80s, and Ismael Robles, those greats. But they were kind of like the old school karate punch and kick art. And what I saw, like Tennessee, what you're saying, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, all that little area right there, the little beltway, you saw a lot of kickboxing. You had Rufus in that area. You had, you know what I'm saying? You had
Right.
it was a different element. You had kickboxing in California, and you had kickboxing right there in the central U.S., and then you had some kickboxing in the New Jersey, New York area, and
Right.
it
It was
kind of
in Minnesota too, all through the late 70s, 80s, 90s. Started to fade out a little bit in the late 90s, where MMA and cage fighting started becoming the big hit.
right.
But
So
that's where
here,
the change happened. That's where I see a huge change in America, um, to where I kind of call it the meathead mentality, because now you have all these martial artists running around that know skills, but the characters like gone, gone. I mean, they got skills, but no character.
you know, I, I
Constantly
saw
using it.
I saw the fads come through. Back then you had here in Laredo, you had Shotokan, and you had karate schools, you had Taekwondo schools, and all of a sudden the ninja phrase came of age. Now all of a
Right.
sudden everybody's wearing a black uniform. You're like, okay. From one day to the next, everybody had to order a black uniform, and then all of a sudden it kept going this way, and then all of a sudden in the '90s it kind of went into the Filipino stick fighting craze. The Kali craze, the Eskrima craze, that kind of went this way, and all of a sudden MMA came of age,
Right.
UFC came of age, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu came of age, and now everybody that you see is that were in, say, Wataru Karate or Shotokan Karate and beautiful systems like that. The instructor, because they needed to make ends meet, all of a sudden is wearing a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu uniform, teaching Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and you tell them, when did you go? I went to a seminar, but that doesn't give you the rank to, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And unfortunately, we all, like you said, we're bringing back the idea for self-defense.
Right.
Everybody has how can I say? I'm not using the word. Everybody is known for something. Okay, the respect that you have within the community. Either you go to this school over here because they're going to teach you how to fight, or you go to that school. Nah, don't go over there because those guys are always getting their butt whipped outside or in the ring. You know what I'm saying? That mentality, and that now it used to be. Right now, you don't see it anymore because everybody's doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Nobody,
Right.
you don't. You know what I mean?
In this area, there's organizations that develop their own styles and systems according to the society around them, and
Okay.
use terms like taekwondo and stuff like that to run their schools, and they're big. They're huge organizations,
Sure.
but they're such belt focused and driven for commercialism, and that's the unique thing of that, Marilis, I discovered when we started traveling internationally. America is blinded by commercialism, blinded by it. We seem to always want validation for everything without earning it ultimately. And when we went to countries like Estonia and countries like Brazil, I mean, if you think you're a good black belt in America, you better tie your belt.
Yeah, go trade and see. I mean, I know that some people can't afford to go outside of the country, but if you can get yourself immersed into different styles, different teachings, even when you've mastered an art, you're still learning. I think that's another thing that people and parents don't understand is that when you're going through white through black belt, okay, I've had 4 or 5 black belts that I've helped train over the years too, who as soon as they get their first degree, they're gone.
Right.
Yeah.
They think that that's it. They think that black belt, boom, first degree, black belt, boom. And then I'm done. I've learned everything. The thing is that black belt doesn't mean that you're done. It means the journey is actually just really begun for you. Now you've mastered all these skills. Now you have this character that you can control yourself, because if you misuse those skills, you could really hurt somebody. But now you get to learn everything else that's in between. And it's really a lifestyle and not just like a sport.
One of our requirements, Marilis and I, as masters, require our own junior black belts and adult black belts to get in some ring time with a boxer. And this is where black belts, their lights, the color of the lights begin to change in their head. Because when you can fight a boxer that's been doing it for 2 or 3 years, and then person that's been doing martial arts for 2 or 3 years, people see that they need work. So we like to pressure test our students in all different facets. We pressure test them grappling, we pressure test them in self-defense and combat, and just, close quarter combat, weapons, of course, the sparring, tournament competition type of sparring, and then just realistic type of street type of kickboxing. But it's a switch, and that's where I think over the next couple of years, if we stay focused on that, less on sports, less on taking students to tournaments. Don't get me wrong, we do have students that ask, but it's not like it used to be. I think that also our economy right now plays in. I think a lot of parents can't afford to bring their children to a lot of competitions and stuff. And then also the parents, any parents that can continuously bring their children to a martial arts school for several years, just keep doing it. They get some applause for doing so, because it's hard work in today's society to be able to do that. But in the end game, it's so worth it.
You're absolutely correct. I think that what we're getting at is for parents to understand the value of the school and the instructors and what they're being taught. Only because it says martial arts, karate, they're not all the same.
Right.
Different. You can even have a style of this. I'm going to pick TaeKwonDo as per se. And you might have 4 or 5 different TaeKwonDo schools in the city. Each one of those schools is going to be different.
Yes.
And you have boxing gyms. You can do boxing at one of the fitness centers, or you can do boxing at a boxing gym. Totally 2 different things.
Right. And then some of it, when some of these schools are tacking TaeKwonDo on their names, they're not even teaching TaeKwonDo.
Yeah, or
something totally different.
So I think it's important for parents to realize, with there being different martial arts schools in the area, do your research. Just because that your best friend's daughter goes to that school, although the hearsay is very, very wise to go by, go and check it out yourself. Have your kid try it out. See what you like in the teaching. See what you like in the curriculum itself. If you're like, this is not what's going to get my kid to where I want them to be, or what they need to be, go to somewhere else. I've had multiple parents who they came in and they went to almost every school here in Cleveland. And they were like, they don't have the value that you guys have. And that's what I was looking for my kid for training. And that's mainly the reason why they're coming, is because they're coming to get that character development. But they did their research. They didn't just settle with, hey, I heard that that's the #1 school because they have 300 students, and I'm going to go there because that's where everybody else is going. They went and tried it out. They said, okay, let's see how this one is. Let's go try Bateman's. Go to Bateman's. Oh, okay, I see where this is different at. Okay, and I see that they're learning the real deal. Okay. They go somewhere else to try out different class. Okay, I can compare and see, okay, this is the fit, this is the martial arts that I want my kid to get involved with.
Absolutely. I always tell
people more personable and then less business. martial arts teaching is a business. And you can trade. I mean, years ago when I started out in the 80s, I traded with friends. You know, I'll teach you martial arts and you work on my car, whatever. But it's to the point where it's so commercial and Disneyland. And martial arts is not supposed to be like that. And when these people train at that level, it is going to develop a false sense of security.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
When you're going to a Taekwondo school, research, where does Taekwondo come from? It comes from Korea. If your Taekwondo school is certified and recognized in Korea, you're probably you're probably doing Taekwondo.
And that doesn't mean just Taekwondo. I mean, any martial arts, do your research, because you never know if somebody just was like, hey, today I'm going to wake up and I'm going to become a martial arts instructor.
Right.
It is so easy to make the facade look like this beautiful thing and that they've been all these accomplishments. But if there's no credibility behind that, you're, like he was saying, you're going to get kids who are taught this false security in their self-confidence.
Right.
Yeah, here's something that I always tell parents. When you come here, look at it, two things. Come here, and I want you to pay attention to the older students that have been around me for the longest time. Pay attention to the way they act. I don't want you to look how I act or how the other coaches act. Act how the other students that are higher ranked there. Why? Because that's the way your son or daughter is going to look like if she continues in growth, right?
Right.
And after that, I always tell them this: if they're interested, take this as a vocation, because hopefully in the future, they're here long enough, take it as an education, because in the future, maybe they'll use this as a vocation, open up a school.
Right.
Teach at a college, teach somewhere else, have it as part of what they were doing in you're studying in college and you're teaching martial arts at another school. Use it as that. Take it as a vocation, because it is a vocation. Right. And I don't make fun of anybody that's trying to make money from the different types, whether it's McDojo or a fight club or what have you, or a stable, or just teaching traditional arts. Each one of them has found their niche. Keep on fighting and doing good. But we as parents and as consumers, we also have the choice where to want to buy, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, no instructor should teach for free, and there's bills to pay. And I think that it's important to have a good business mindset, but money shouldn't be the ultimate focus. Goal, yes, you need to cover bills. So yes, it is an ultimate goal as a martial arts master and a school owner. But what one must show is more empathy in the way that you teach, and showing that you're not there doing it for the money, you're doing it for the result of what happens to the individual person. But hey, if I'm going to teach these things to you, open up a facility, operate a curriculum in a business, then, I also need to be able to cover my bills and be paid for it. I personally have been working for many years, a full-time job and a part-time job on the side, teaching martial arts. We don't make a primary source of our living through teaching martial arts. We do well, and we do make money teaching martial arts, but that's not our primary source of making our livings.
Understood. And we're running out of time, so I want to thank both of you for continuing this journey and to producing good martial artists in your area. It's a joy. It's a joy to see, because it doesn't happen that often. You don't. And right. But like I said, doors are open. Anytime you guys want to come down here to Laredo, please do so. We have things going on.
That'd be fun. And vice versa. If you're ever here in Tennessee, come on, step on the mat. We'll train. We'll learn. We'll grow together. Absolutely.
Anytime. We'll do that one day. Once more, I want to thank you both for being here. Okay. And for enlightening us with your all's experiences, because that's how we all grow.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Until and everybody out there, how do we leave you? You all be safe, stay safe, and God bless you. Until next time, much peace.
Certain victory.
Have you ever wondered about what happens in a martial arts studio? Well, you start right away by setting goals, building determination, gaining focus, building skills, all while becoming more fit, gaining confidence, and learning self-defense. Buitron Academy is a school where attitude meets aptitude. So give us a call at 956-401-4868.